Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to offer a little bit of a lesson on the fire and lightning infusion paths in Elden Ring because they behave very differently compared to how they worked in the previous Souls games. Previously, if you had like fire or lightning, it would either completely remove the scaling entirely or add like faith-based scaling or intelligence scaling like the Chaos infusion path in Dark Souls 3. So it would always add caster stats when you added like an element to it. There was like the blessed infusion path, but it wasn't very good. It was mostly for passive benefits like regen. But for the most part, there were not really any strength or dexterity elemental damage types in the games. But Elden Ring has changed this, and now strength is heavily associated with fire, and dexterity is now associated with lightning. So there's actually main offensive stats tied to infusions now that are not caster stats, and it's very weird. So I want to show you the difference so far. So we're not going to change stats at all. Let's say we have 50 strength and we're holding the heavy greatsword. So it's a heavy A scaling in strength greatsword, and we're looking at 796 attack rating. Now, if we were to switch this to fire with the exact same stats, we're at 862 attack rating. Exact same stats. Now, obviously, this is not as good, though, because we're doing split damage. Split damage has to go through two types of resistances. Now, as your lower level, your flat resistances are not very high. Every time you spend a point in any attribute in this game, your flat resistances go up. So the lower level you are, the better split damage is against you. So once you get past, like, level 120, 130, 140, 150, once you start getting much higher up into there, split damage becomes not as effective point for point. Now, the thing is, usually when you do have split attack damage, you have just more attack rating overall. So even if you have like 900 split damage, it's going to be equivalent to like 750 pure physical damage, for example. So that's sort of how it ends up going without any additional effort. You just simply have more attack rating, but your damage is reduced by more things. That's usually how it works. But you can see here, I have the exact same stats, and our damage is the same. Now, the thing is, when you go much higher, let's say 66 strength, and we go pure heavy. Now we're at 844 AR, which is huge. But again, if we go to fire, it still ends up being more. But there's different caps when you use the fire and lightning infusion path. So normally, if you're going through a pure stat offensive scaling, just one single stat, it typically caps out at 80. That's the hard cap. That's only if you have one stat. Now, if you have something that's split between like strength and dex or strength and faith or something like that, then the caps are lower, and fire and lightning are no exception. So heavy works all the way up to 80 because we have, a heavy infusion with only one offensive stat. Technically, you can go higher because you can go over 99 strength while two-handing, but the returns are not nearly as good. So for the most part, offensive or soft caps are at 80 when there's one offensive stat being used. But now since we're splitting it, it actually caps down at 50. So for less stat investment, we're looking at pretty much the exact same AR. So at 50 strength with fire, we're at 862. And if we go to 66 with heavy, we're at, oh God, what did I do? Oops. We're at 844. So yeah, I mean, 844 compared to 862. So we still have more with 50 strength than we do with the pure physical heavy infusion. So the attack rating right there is still higher with 16 less stats. Now, the thing is, though, when you have split damage, like I said, you need to have way more attack rating for it to match the pure physical. But look at the options this opens up. So instead of just having pure 66 strength and then that's it, you just do pure physical damage, now we have 16 spare stats. What if we just put the 16 spare stats into faith? So we have this now instead. Now we've thrown like a faith talisman, and now we can just do golden vow for 5% more damage in PvP. We can do flame grant me strength for 20% more damage. Now, because we have fire damage, we can throw on a fire crystal tier in our physic for 20% more fire damage. So let's do the math on all this stuff. So right now, we're going to add to the fire attack rating, we're going to add 20% more because we have the crystal tier in our physic, because that gives you 20% more fire damage. Okay, so we're at 519. And then because these are all multiplicative, we're going to multiply that again by 519 times 1.2 again, because we're going to be using flame grant me strength. So now our fire damage is 622. Let's remember that value, 622. Now let's do the physical damage as well. So now we have 429. That's going to be multiplied by 1.2 because we're going to have flame grant me strength, which does fire and physical damage. So that's 514. So now we have 514 plus 622, And then we're going to multiply all this times 1.05 for the golden vow buff that we can now use because we have additional faith stats. Now we're at an attack rating of basically 1200. And that's going to do more damage than an 850 AR pure physical weapon most of the time. Now, if they have like a fire resistance spell or something, it can be different. But this is with less stats too, by the way. I'm using less stats to achieve this. And this is why the main takeaway I want to make with the fire and lightning path is that these should be used for every single one of your low-level characters, like below level 100 pretty much. So if you're making an invasion character, you want to go some type of elemental affinity. Now, if you want to go the dexterity path as well, I mean, it's basically the same thing. Let's do like a less strength-based weapon. Let's go with, lightning instead. And let's do the base requirements for strength here. And then we're going to go, so we're at 547 AR. So let's look at the keen path that we have, 80 dexterity here. We're at 737 pure physical AR. Now we go to lightning, and then we're at 804. So it works the exact same way with the other things too. It's just when you split your element, your damage is overall going to be resisted more, but in this game, there are more things to buff up your elemental damages, so you end up actually getting more damage a lot of the time. Like I said, at pure high level stuff where your flat resistances keep getting higher and higher, like if you're above level or like 150 or above, then these are not nearly as useful, I would say. But pretty much any time below that, it's actually better to have this type of infusion if you build correctly and have things that buff the damage of your build perfectly. So if you're making a low-level character, I have to recommend you try out Fire and Lightning. You will just simply get more damage for less stats. So you can be even lower level and deal even more damage. It's very, very underrated, and people are not, I think, fully understanding that these calculations have sort of changed because they actually have different scaling now. So I really recommend you try out Fire and Lightning. They're game-changing completely. So that's it, guys. Hopefully that was clear enough. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and I'll be sure to explain them. But thank you for watching. See you next time.